Joining me now is Art Laffer, Laffer Associate CEO and former Reagan economist. Art, always good to see you. Okay, the Biden administration wants credit for those gas prices falling. Do you give them any credit for the reduction we've seen over the last month?
I've been in this world too long. Let me just tell you that hypocrisy is the mother's milk of hack politicians. And of course, it's ridiculous that they will rue the day they took credit for the downturn, because those oil prices can go up just as much as they can go down. And when you look at over the next 6 months, well, let's see, before the election, it's very possible that they go quite high again. Will they then claim credit for that? Of course not. You know, these guys will rebut arguments they know to be true, Brian, in order to curry favors with their political benefactors. It's just embarrassing.
Art, when you look at the price decrease over the last month, the one thing that sticks out to people who are just looking at the data is that it's really coincided with pessimism about the U.S. economy and the global economy, the talk of recession. Oil prices come down when we're talking about recession, and that brings gas prices down. Are we reliant on that kind of bad news to get relief at the pump right now, Art?
I think that's true, too. I mean, copper prices, lumber prices, oil prices, all of these prices of spot commodities that are very critical to the stage of development of the economy to a boom or a downturn are the ones that are going down. Rents aren't going down. Let me tell you, that's not. All the other main aspects of this thing are not. And Brian, one final point on the CPI, if I may, with you. Yep. The 3 months that are going to be dropped from this index are three of the lowest months. This is next month, the month after, and the month before the election. These are three of the lowest numbers, monthly numbers of all. If the CPI comes in on a monthly basis anywhere near its normal level, that darn index is going to go popping up over 10%, and it's going to be really an embarrassment when you see it over 10% and maybe even higher.
Which means the trend is bad. What you're saying is the trend is bad, and it's not going to get
really
better.
Bad.
Yes. Art, real quickly, so we've heard the president talk about declaring a climate emergency. Apparently, he's going to back off the emergency language, but we're still going to get some climate executive orders. What kind of effect is that going to have on the economy?
Well, I don't know what they're going to be. I haven't looked at them, but I imagine they're going to be awful like the rest of his policies. But this man should be very careful, because the Supreme Court is a serious Supreme Court now, Brian, and they really look at the constitutionality of issues. And does he have the right to use these executive orders if, in fact, the legislation has not been passed that would corroborate and condone these type of executive orders? If he doesn't, he may well find himself being overruled by the Supreme Court and not being able to get those executive orders in. I think this man is testing the limits of U.S. policy and his own power.
Yeah, you know, he talks a lot about being a protector of democracy, but when democracy doesn't work for him, then it's dictatorship and it's executive orders. Stay there, Art. We'll be back to you in just a second. Now to this, the Committee to Unleash Prosperity publishing a new report showing that top executive branch officials responsible for economic issues have an average of only 2.4 years of business experience. Let's go to Hillary Vaughn on Capitol Hill with more details. Hillary.
Good evening, Brian. Well, today marks 1 year since the president said that his advisors told him that inflation is temporary. It wasn't going to be a problem that was sticking around for a long time. Well, they were wrong, and some people are not surprised. The Committee to Unleash Prosperity is pointing out a glaring lack of business experience among Biden's own economic team. They studied their resumes and found that while a lot of them had experience in government and academia, business experience was hard to find. For example, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, OMB Director Shalonda Young, the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors Cecilia Rouse all have 0 years of experience in business. The director of National Economic Council, Brian Dees, has just 3 years of experience in business. The committee writing this, quote, "The Biden administration has made diversity a major goal of its administration, but the one area that is solely missing in this diversity goal is in attracting talented and experienced men and women from the field of small business, commerce, and finance." Some Republicans say this lack of business experience is showing up in the president's handling of the economy.
Every economic decision this president has made so far has been wrong. I think it's good to have advisors, but eventually we need a commander-in-chief that understands business. Whoever's giving him advice, either he's taking bad advice or he's making bad decisions, he being the president.
But But some Democrats do not feel like this lack of business experience is anything to worry about. In fact, some are pointing to former President Trump appointees that were the source of some of this advice.
Jay Powell was the most important nominee President Trump put on the Federal Reserve, one of the most important jobs in the country. He's the one that said it's transitory, and others followed his advice. You can't just lay it on Biden when it was Trump's nominee as chair of the Federal Reserve that began this, inflation is transitory talk.
And a White House official this evening is defending the president's economic team, saying the president has full confidence in his advisors. But they're also pointing out that the president is not just talking to his advisors. He's talking directly to businesses, to CEOs, to companies across industries that are giving him advice and information and guidance on some of these policy decisions. So he's not just relying on an isolated group of people. He is engaging directly with businesses. Brian?
Hillary Vaughn, great reporting. Thank you. Art Laffer, let's get back to you. So this has always struck me as an administration that governs on the economy like it's full of academics and people who spent a lifetime in D.C. Now we've got the proof. That's a real liability. Art, tell us how that's a real liability.
Well, let me start off by saying I'm one of the founders of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity that did this study. It was Steve Moore and others and John that did the study, but I'm one of the founders there. And let me just say that, it's so true. The experience there, the president, by the way, the president is the most one of all. He has no official business experience either. Now, when you look at Powell, and the President Trump did appoint Powell, but President Trump had the business experience. He didn't need extra business experience from Powell. But now Biden reappointed him, so he owns Powell 100%, and neither one has business experience. It's just ridiculous what's going on here. And by the way, just because you have experience doesn't mean you're going to be good. If you've had bad experience and been a failure every time you've had a job, don't think that the next time you're going to take that job, you're going to be better. These guys have never been tested in the marketplace. That's the important thing, Brian. The marketplace is where losers go bankrupt and winners make money. And these people have never been tested there. Academics are never tested on that. I mean, they make money either way. The more commotion they cause, the higher their pay, the more attention they're paid.
Yes.
So this is the study from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity is dead on. We need people who have faced the test of the market that run the government, not people who've been appointed to something here, there, or elsewhere.
And, I think that's why this administration feels so out of touch to people. When you talk about inflation, when you talk about gas prices, it's like these guys have never thought about it before. And the answer is because for most of them, they really never have. Art, we got to leave it there. Always good to see you, sir. Thanks for being with us. You bet.
My pleasure.